21 days later, the blueprint to becoming someone new. You'll be dead in 3 weeks, not literally, but the person you are right now, gone. What if every failure in your life came from one invisible pattern you repeat every 21 days? Most people spend decades trying to change. You have 504 hours. Here's what nobody tells you. Your brain replaces itself every 3 weeks. You just never gave it new instructions. 2 questions decide everything. Who are you today? Who could you become by day 22? This isn't motivation. It's neurological architecture, the science of becoming someone else. 3 weeks from now, you'll either be exactly who you are now or unrecognizable. Part 1. The Identity Crisis, the Stranger in the Mirror. There's a moment that happens to almost everyone, usually sometime in their 30s or 40s, though it can come earlier or later. You're brushing your teeth or washing your hands, or just passing by a reflective surface, and you catch a glimpse of yourself. Not the version you carry in your mind, the one frozen at 25, or whenever you last felt truly alive. You see the actual person standing there, and you think, who the hell is that? It's not about aging, though that's part of it. It's something deeper and more disturbing. It's the realization that you've become someone you never intended to be. Somewhere along the way, you made a series of compromises, took a series of detours, said yes when you meant no, and no when you meant yes. And now you're living a life that belongs to a stranger. You're wearing their clothes, living in their house, working their job, maybe even sleeping next to their partner. The technical term for this is identity calcification. Your personality, which was once fluid and adaptable, has hardened into something fixed. Like bone that was once cartilage, your identity has ossified around patterns that made sense at one time but no longer serve you. The problem is, most people don't realize this is happening until it's already happened. They wake up one day and discover they've been living on autopilot for years, maybe decades. Think about the last time you did something truly surprising. Not something slightly out of character, but something that made you think, I didn't know I had that in me. If you have to go back more than a year, you're calcified. If you have to go back more than 5 years, you're fossilized. And if you can't remember at all, you've been dead for a while and just haven't noticed. Here's what happens. You make a decision at 22 about who you're going to be. Maybe you decide you're the responsible one, the funny one, the one who always has it together. Maybe you decide you're not creative, not athletic, not smart enough for certain things. These decisions feel insignificant at the time. They're just observations about yourself, right? Except they're not observations. They're verdicts. And once you hand down a verdict about who you are, your brain gets to work, making it true. Your brain is an efficiency machine. It doesn't want to waste energy reevaluating your identity every day. So it creates shortcuts, neural pathways that make it easier to be the same person tomorrow that you were today. These pathways get stronger with repetition. After a while, they're not pathways anymore. They're grooves, then ruts, then canyons. And you're at the bottom looking up at walls so high you can't remember what the sky looks like. The question is, when did this happen to you? When did you stop evolving and start repeating? There's a specific moment, a decision point, a before and after. For some people, it was a relationship that ended or one that began. For others, it was a job they took or a dream they abandoned. For many, it was something that seemed small at the time but turned out to be a cornerstone. I stopped playing music when I started the new job. I stopped traveling after I had kids. I stopped writing after that rejection letter. I stopped being fun after I got serious about my career. You need to find that moment, not to dwell on it or regret it, but to understand it. Because you can't become someone new until you know exactly when you stopped being who you were meant to be. This is the last time protocol, and it's simple but not easy. You're going to think back through your life and identify the last time you felt like yourself. Not happy, necessarily, not successful, but authentic, unedited, fully expressed, the version of you that made sense. For most people, this moment is further back than they want to admit. It might be college, or high school, or even childhood. That's okay. Don't judge it, just find it. Then ask yourself, what happened next? What decision did I make? What door did I close? What part of myself did I amputate to fit into the life I thought I was supposed to have? Now come the 3 lies you tell yourself about who you are. The first lie is that your personality is fixed. You think you were born a certain way, and that's just how you are. Introverted or extroverted, anxious or calm, creative or logical. But personality isn't genetic destiny. Studies on identical twins raised apart show that personality traits have about a 50% correlation. That means half of who you are is determined by your environment and choices. You're not stuck with who you were born as. You're only stuck with who you've practiced being. The second lie is that you're too old to change. You've heard the saying about old dogs and new tricks. It's nonsense. The human brain remains plastic, capable of forming new neural connections well into old age. Yes, it's easier to change when you're younger, but easier doesn't mean possible versus impossible. It means you'll need to be more intentional. The neuroplasticity window doesn't close. It just requires more effort to open. The third lie is the most insidious, that changing who you are is somehow inauthentic. You think there's a real you underneath all the performance, and your job is to find and express that essential self. But there is no essential self. There's only the self you've constructed through thousands of daily choices. And if you constructed it once, you can construct it again, differently this time. So here's your identity audit. 15 questions. And you need to answer them honestly, not aspirationally. Who do you become when you're stressed? Who do you become when you're alone? What do you do that you don't want to do? What don't you do that you wish you would? What do people expect from you that makes you feel trapped? What part of yourself do you hide most consistently? What would you do if no one was watching? What would you stop doing if no one would be disappointed? When do you feel most like yourself? When do you feel most like an imposter? What did you love that you stopped doing? What do you do now that you don't even enjoy? Who were you before you became who you are? Who do you pretend to be? And finally, who do you actually want to be? Write these answers down. Don't think too hard about them. First response is usually the true one. You're building a map of your current operating system. And here's what you need to understand about operating systems. They can be uninstalled. Everything you think you are, every pattern you think is permanent, every limitation you think is hardwired, it's all just software. And software can be replaced, but before we get to replacement, we need to talk about why you keep running the same buggy program over and over again. Because it's not an accident. Your self-sabotage has architecture. The architecture of self-sabotage. Your brain is trying to kill your dreams, and it's very good at its job. Not because it hates you, but because it loves you in a very particular way. It loves you the way an overprotective parent loves a child. It wants to keep you safe, and the safest thing you can do is stay exactly the same. Change is dangerous. The unknown is dangerous. So your brain has developed an elaborate defense system to prevent you from becoming someone new. This system operates through what I call the failure triangle. It has 3 points: trigger, behavior, reward. And it's running in the background of your life right now, sabotaging your transformation in ways you don't even notice. Let me show you how it works. The trigger is usually a feeling: anxiety, boredom, loneliness, overwhelm, even excitement. Something happens that creates an uncomfortable emotional state. Let's say you're working on a project that matters to you, something that could actually change your life if you followed through. You sit down to work on it, and immediately you feel anxiety. Not debilitating panic, just that low-grade static of discomfort. That's the trigger. Your brain registers the anxiety and initiates the sabotage protocol. The behavior comes next. This is whatever you do to relieve the uncomfortable feeling. You check your phone. You decide you need to do more research first. You remember an urgent email you need to send. You realize you should probably clean your workspace before you start. You get a snack. You decide this isn't the right time and you'll start tomorrow when you're better prepared. These behaviors all seem reasonable in the moment. They're not dramatic acts of self-destruction. They're small, justifiable redirections. But they all accomplish the same thing. They move you away from the anxiety-producing activity and towards something familiar and safe. And here's the crucial part. They work. The anxiety decreases. You feel relief. That's the reward. Your brain notices this. Anxiety appeared. You did a thing. Anxiety disappeared. From your brain's perspective, this is a successful pattern worth repeating. It doesn't care that you just sabotaged your goals. It only cares that you survived the uncomfortable feeling. So, the neural pathway gets reinforced. Next time you sit down to work on that project, the trigger comes faster, the behavior comes easier, and the reward feels more necessary. After enough repetitions, the pattern becomes automatic. You don't even realize you're doing it. You just know that somehow you never seem to follow through on the things that matter most. You tell yourself you're lazy, or you lack discipline, or you're not ready yet. But it's none of those things. You're not failing because of a character flaw. You're failing because you have a deeply entrenched neural program designed to protect you from discomfort, and that program is incompatible with transformation. Look at your life right now, and you'll find this triangle everywhere. That relationship you keep trying to fix but keeps breaking the same way. That business you keep meaning to start but never launch. That creative project you've been working on for 3 years without finishing. That conversation you need to have but keep postponing. Every one of these stalled areas has a failure triangle running underneath it. Let me tell you about Marcus. He was a VP at a tech company, 43 years old, well compensated, respected by his peers. On paper, he was successful. In reality, he was a saboteur. Every 18 months, like clockwork, he would destroy something important in his life. He'd quit a job right before a promotion, end a relationship that was going well, move to a new city and have to start over, blow up a friendship over something trivial. When he came to me, he was 6 months into a new role at a company he actually liked. And he was starting to feel that familiar itch, the urge to send a confrontational email to his boss, the temptation to start interviewing at other companies, the fantasy of just walking away from everything and starting fresh somewhere else. He knew the pattern, but he couldn't stop it. Every time he got close to stability, something in him needed to hit the reset button. We mapped his failure triangle. The trigger was success. Specifically, the feeling that came with being seen and valued. It made him anxious in a way he couldn't articulate. The behavior was sabotage. He'd create conflict, make reckless decisions, burn bridges. The reward was the familiar feeling of starting over. New people who didn't know him, low expectations, no pressure to maintain anything, the relief of failure. Where did this come from? His father was an alcoholic who raged at the family when he was drunk and ignored them when he was sober. The only time Marcus got attention was when things went wrong, when there was a crisis to manage or a mess to clean up. As an adult, his nervous system had learned that attention from success felt dangerous, but attention from chaos felt normal. So every time he succeeded, his brain created chaos to restore equilibrium. Once we identified the architecture, we could start dismantling it. But that came later. First, he needed to see it clearly. You do too. So here's your exercise. Think about your last 5 significant failures. Not small mistakes, but major ones. A job you lost or never got. A relationship that ended badly. A goal you abandoned. A pattern you can't break. A version of yourself you couldn't sustain. For each failure, work backward. What was the behavior that caused it? What was the feeling right before that behavior? That's your trigger. And what did you get from the failure? What relief, what escape, what familiar feeling? That's your reward. Write it down, draw the triangle. Do this 5 times, and you'll start to see the pattern. Here's what's crucial to understand. Your sabotage pattern isn't random. It's systematic, and it repeats on a schedule. For Marcus, it was every 18 months. For some people, it's every relationship. For others, it's every January when they set new goals. For many, it's every 21 days, which is exactly as long as it takes for a new behavior to start feeling real before your old identity reasserts itself. The 72-hour rule explains why. When you try to change, your brain gives you a 3-day grace period. For 72 hours, your willpower and motivation can override your default patterns. You feel good, you feel capable, you think this time is different. But then the 72 hours end, and your autopilot kicks back in. Your old operating system boots up, and unless you've done the deeper work of changing the architecture, you snap back to your original shape like elastic. That's why most people fail at change on day 4. New Year's resolutions die on January 4th. New diets fall apart after the first weekend. Exercise programs lose momentum after the first week. It's not because people lack discipline. It's because they're fighting architecture with effort, and architecture always wins. So what's your sabotage pattern? Can you name it? Can you reduce it to 3 words? Marcus's was succeed, panic, destroy. Some people have connect, fear, withdraw, or commit, doubt, escape, or start, plateau, quit. Yours is probably something. You've been doing so long you think it's just who you are, but it's not. It's just a program running in the background. And now that you can see it, you can begin to shut it down. But first, you need something most people never give themselves. You need permission. The permission slip you've been waiting for. Nobody is going to hand you the authorization to become someone new. Your parents won't do it. Your partner won't do it. Your boss won't do it. Society certainly won't do it. They all have a vested interest in you staying exactly as you are, because your current identity is predictable, and your predictability makes them comfortable. So, if you're waiting for external permission to transform, you'll be waiting forever. You have to give it to yourself. And that's harder than it sounds because you've been conditioned to believe that you need to earn transformation. You think you have to be ready first, qualified, worthy. You think you need to gradually improve until you deserve to be someone different. But that's not how it works. Transformation doesn't come after preparation. It comes after decision. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're allowed to just become someone else. Today, right now. You don't need to justify it or explain it or apologize for it. You don't need to have a good enough reason or a traumatic enough backstory. You don't need to hit rock bottom first. You don't need anyone's approval. You just need your own permission. But there's something stopping you from giving yourself that permission, and it's called false loyalty. False loyalty is the belief that you owe something to your old self, that changing too much would be a betrayal of who you've been, that your past self made decisions and lived a certain life, and abandoning that life would mean those years were wasted or those decisions were wrong. This is a trap. Your past self made the best decisions they could with the information and resources they had at the time. But you are not your past self. You're a different person with different information in different circumstances. You don't owe your 25-year-old self the life they imagined for you. You don't owe your married self your continued participation in a marriage that's suffocating you. You don't owe your corporate self 20 more years in a career that's killing you. Think about it this way. If you met your past self today, as a stranger, would you trust their judgment about how you should live your life? Would you take life advice from who you were? 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Probably not. You've learned things since then. You've grown. You're smarter now, or at least differently informed. So why are you letting that past version of yourself dictate your current reality? The identity contract you signed with yourself years ago is not binding. You can break it any time. In fact, you must break it if you want to become someone new. There's a ritual for this, and it's called the Burning Permission Letter. Here's how it works. You're going to write a letter to yourself, not to your future self, to your current self. In this letter, you're going to give yourself explicit, unconditional permission to become someone new. You're going to release yourself from all obligations to your past identity. You're going to forgive yourself for any perceived failures or wasted years. You're going to acknowledge that the person you've been is not the person you have to remain. This isn't flowery or metaphorical. This is concrete. You write, I, your name, give myself permission to change. I release myself from the identity I've been carrying. I acknowledge that I am not who I was, and I don't have to become who I thought I would be. I am allowed to want different things. Now, I am allowed to be a different person. I am allowed to start over. Then you're going to read this letter out loud, alone, in a private space. Read it slowly. Feel the weight of the words. Notice where you resist, where your voice catches, where it feels too big or too dramatic. That resistance is important. It's showing you where your false loyalty lives. Read it again and again until it starts to feel true. Then you're going to burn it, safely, in a fireplace or a metal bowl or outside. Watch it burn completely. This is not symbolic magic. This is a pattern interrupt. Your brain needs a clear signal that something has ended, so something new can begin. The ritual creates that signal. It tells your nervous system, we're done with that version. We're moving on. But here's where most people get stuck. They think if they change too much, people will judge them. And they're right. People will judge you. Your family will have opinions. Your friends will question your decisions. Strangers will make assumptions. And you have to decide right now that you don't care. Not because judgment doesn't hurt, but because judgment is the price of transformation, and it's a price you're willing to pay. The guilt will try to stop you. Guilt is the gatekeeper to your new life. It will tell you that you're being selfish, irresponsible, reckless, foolish. It will remind you of all the people who depend on the old you. It will make you feel like you're abandoning everyone. But guilt is just fear in a moral costume. It's not actually about right and wrong. It's about your brain trying to keep you in the familiar territory, where it knows how to keep you safe. You need an identity declaration statement. This is different from the permission letter. This is your public claim, the line you'll repeat when people ask what's going on with you. It needs to be short, clear, and non-negotiable. Something like, I'm becoming the person I should have been all along. Or, I'm done living someone else's life. Or, I'm making changes that I should have made years ago. 47 words or fewer. Memorize it. Practice saying it out loud until it doesn't feel awkward. You're going to need this. When people start noticing you're different, and they will notice, change is loud even when you try to be quiet about it. Before we move forward, I need you to do something that might feel strange or uncomfortable or too much. I need you to record yourself saying one sentence. Just pull out your phone, open the voice memo app, and say this. I release who I was. I claim who I'm becoming. Say it clearly. Say it like you mean it. Then listen to it. Hear your own voice giving yourself permission. Save that recording. You're going to need it later when the doubt comes. Because the doubt will come. Around day 6 or 7, when the initial motivation has worn off and you're standing in the space between your old self and your new self, you're going to wonder if this was all a mistake. You're going to want to go back. That recording will remind you that you made a conscious choice. You gave yourself permission. And permission, once given, cannot be revoked by fear. Part 2. The demolition phase. Killing your old operating system. You cannot build a new self on top of the old one. This is the mistake everyone makes. They try to add new habits to their existing life, overlay new behaviors onto old patterns, become someone different without actually changing anything fundamental. It doesn't work. You'll just end up with a confused hybrid that collapses back into the original form under pressure. Demolition comes first. You have to dismantle the structures that support your current identity before you can build something new. This is uncomfortable. This is disorienting. This will make you question whether you're doing the right thing, but it's not optional. If you skip this phase, everything that comes after will fail. Let's start with your environment, because your environment is programming you every single day, whether you realize it or not. Every object in your space, every piece of furniture, every item on your walls is sending your brain a message about who you are. And right now, all those messages are saying, you're the same person you were yesterday. We're going to change that. Look around the space where you spend most of your time. Your bedroom, your office, your living room. What in this space belongs to the person you're trying to stop being? What are you keeping out of habit, out of obligation, out of some vague sense that you might need it someday? That's the first layer of demolition. For some people, it's clothes they never wear but can't throw away because they represent a version of themselves they're still clinging to. For others, it's books they bought but never read, projects they started but never finished, equipment for hobbies they abandoned years ago. For many, it's photographs and memorabilia that keep them anchored to a past they need to leave behind. I'm not saying you need to erase your history, but you do need to stop living in a museum of your former self. If something in your environment makes you feel obligated to be who you were, it has to go. If it makes you feel guilty for not being who you thought you'd be, it has to go. If it's there because someone else expects it to be there, it has to go. The environment redesign protocol is simple. You're going to do 7 subtractions, 7 things that anchor you to your old identity. You're going to remove them from your primary space, not hide them in a closet, not store them in the garage. Remove them. Donate, sell, trash, or give away. Gone. This is harder than it sounds because your brain will fight you. It will tell you every item is too valuable, too meaningful, too useful to let go. That's your old identity defending itself. It knows that if the environment changes, it's next on the demolition list. So, it will make you believe that keeping these objects is rational and necessary. It's not. It's resistance. After the 7 subtractions, you do the redesign. This doesn't mean you need to buy new furniture or repaint or spend money you don't have. It means you rearrange what's left to support who you're becoming instead of who you were. If your new self is someone who reads every morning, create a reading space that's comfortable and inviting. If your new self is someone who works on creative projects, set up a workspace that makes that easy. If your new self is someone who takes care of their body, make your bedroom and bathroom reflect that priority. Your space should make your new behaviors easier and your old behaviors harder. That's friction design. You want to create friction around patterns you're trying to break and remove friction around patterns you're trying to build. If you're trying to stop watching television for 3 hours every night, make it harder to watch television. Unplug it, put it in a closet, face the couch away from the screen. If you're trying to start exercising in the morning, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Put your shoes by the door. Make it so easy that you'd have to actively choose not to do it. But environment isn't just physical space. It's also digital space, and your digital environment is probably even more influential than your physical one because you spend more time in it. So let's talk about your phone, your social media, your email, your entire online presence. All of it is designed to keep you exactly as you are. Think about your social media feeds. Who are you following? What are you looking at every day? Is it content that supports your transformation or content that reinforces your old identity? Most people's feeds are filled with people and pages that represent the person they used to be. Old interests, old values, old versions of aspiration. You're scrolling through a highlight reel of your former life, and your brain is absorbing the message. This is who you are. Unfollow aggressively, not to be cruel, not to burn bridges, but to protect your transformation. Anyone whose content makes you feel like your old self should go. Any page or group that represents who you were, instead of who you're becoming, should go. any account that makes you feel obligated to be someone you're trying not to be should go. This includes friends, family, colleagues. You can stay connected in other ways, but your feed needs to reflect your new identity, not accommodate your old one. Then there's the relationship audit, and this is where it gets really uncomfortable. Your social circle is the most powerful environmental factor in your life. The people you spend time with determine how you think, how you feel, what you believe is possible, and who you're allowed to become. And if your social circle is full of people who know you as your old self, they're going to consciously or unconsciously resist your transformation. This doesn't mean everyone in your life is toxic or holding you back, but it does mean you need to evaluate every relationship honestly and ask, is this person invested in who I was or open to who I'm becoming? Some people will be excited about your change. They'll support you, cheer you on, adapt to the new version of you. Keep those people close, but others won't. They'll feel threatened or confused or abandoned. They'll make comments about how you've changed, and it won't sound like a compliment. They'll try to pull you back into old patterns because your old patterns were comfortable for them. They'll question your decisions, doubt your capability, remind you of all the times you've tried and failed before. These people are incompatible with your transformation, and you have 3 options. Limit contact, have a direct conversation about what you need from them, or end the relationship. That last option is the hardest one, but sometimes it's necessary. You cannot carry people who are actively working against your evolution. You cannot stay in relationships where you have to shrink yourself to make the other person comfortable. You cannot prioritize someone else's expectation of who you should be over your own becoming. Here's what this looked like for Rachel. She was 36, a high school English teacher in Ohio, married for 11 years, 2 kids, stable life, nothing obviously wrong. Except she was dying inside. Not dramatically, just quietly suffocating under the weight of being who everyone needed her to be. She came to the realization that she'd been performing the role of Rachel the teacher, Rachel the wife, Rachel the mother, for so long that she'd forgotten there was supposed to be a person underneath all those roles. She started with her physical environment. She cleaned out her closet and got rid of everything she wore out of obligation. All the conservative work clothes that made her feel like she was in uniform. All the comfortable mom outfits that made her feel invisible. She kept only things that made her feel like herself, which turned out to be about 20% of what she owned. Then she tackled her classroom. She'd been teaching the same books the same way for 8 years. Safe choices, no risk. She redesigned her entire curriculum around the things she actually cared about, the books that had changed her life, the conversations she'd been too afraid to have with her students. Her principal raised an eyebrow but didn't stop her. Then came the hard part. Her social life was built around other couples in her neighborhood, monthly dinners, weekend barbecues, group vacations. She liked these people fine, but they knew her as the version of herself she was trying to shed. Every interaction reinforced that old identity. She started declining invitations. Not all of them, but enough that people noticed. She stopped initiating, stopped accommodating, and slowly those relationships faded to the background. Her husband didn't understand at first. He kept asking what was wrong, why she was being distant, if she was having some kind of crisis. He wasn't trying to be controlling. He was just scared because the person he married was changing, and he didn't know who he was married to anymore. They almost didn't make it. But eventually, after a lot of difficult conversations, he decided to meet the new version of her. They're still married. But it's a different marriage now. Better, she says, more honest. Not everyone's demolition needs to be that extensive. But everyone's demolition needs to be real. You can't just rearrange a few things and call it transformation. You have to actually dismantle the architecture of your old life. So, here's your assignment. Identify 7 things that anchor you to who you were. They can be objects, digital follows, relationships, commitments, anything. Write them down. Then over the next 96 hours, remove all 7. Not someday, not when it feels right. In the next 4 days. You're going to feel discomfort. That's the point. That discomfort is your old identity fighting for its survival. Let it fight. Let it throw every objection and every rationalization at you. And then remove the 7 things anyway. This is the 96-hour discomfort rule. If you can survive 4 days of intentional discomfort, you can survive the entire transformation. Photograph your environment before you start. Then photograph it after the 7 subtractions. You need visual proof that you're actually changing things, not just thinking about changing things. Your brain needs to see the difference. The story. You keep telling. Every limitation you have came from a story, not from reality, not from some objective truth about who you are and what you're capable of. From a story. And most of the time, it's not even your story. It's a story someone told you about yourself, and you believed them, and then you spent the next 10 or 20 or 40 years making that story true. The story might have started with a parent who said you were too sensitive, too loud, not smart enough for math, never going to be an athlete. It might have come from a teacher who dismissed your ideas, a partner who made you feel small, a friend who defined you in a way that stuck. Or maybe you told yourself the story after a failure or a rejection and it calcified into fact. But here's what you need to understand. The story is not you. The story is just a narrative you've been repeating so many times, you forgot it was a story. And if it's just a story, you can change it. You can rewrite it. You can throw it out entirely and tell a completely different one. First, you need to excavate the origin story. This is the narrative that built your cage. For some people, it's obvious. They can point to a specific moment when they learned they weren't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. For others, it's more subtle. A pattern of experiences that accumulated into a belief about themselves. There are 4 toxic story types that most people are running. The first is the victim story. In this version, things happened to you and you had no control. Life dealt you a bad hand. Other people got lucky, but you got cheated. You're at the mercy of circumstances, and therefore nothing is your fault, but also nothing can change. This story absolves you of responsibility, but it also strips you of power. The second is the martyr story. You sacrificed everything for everyone else. You gave up your dreams for your family, your health for your career, your needs for other people's comfort. You're the one who always puts others first, and look at what it cost you. This story makes you noble, but it also makes you stuck because if you stop sacrificing, you lose your identity. The third is the underdog story. You've always had to fight harder than everyone else. Nothing came easy. You had to struggle for every bit of success while others had it handed to them. This story gives you resilience and grit, but it also means you can't let yourself succeed too easily, because that would contradict the narrative. So, You unconsciously create obstacles to maintain the identity of the one who has to overcome. The fourth is the imposter story. You're not really qualified, talented, or deserving. You've fooled everyone into thinking you're capable, but deep down you know you're a fraud. One day they'll figure it out. This story keeps you performing and proving yourself, but it also means you can never relax into your own success, because success is just evidence that the deception is working. Which story are you telling? Maybe it's one of these. Maybe it's a combination. Maybe it's something unique to your experience. But I guarantee you have one. And that story is running your life more than any other single factor. Here's how you find it. Finish these sentences without thinking too hard about it. Just write the first thing that comes to mind. I am the kind of person who always... Things never work out for me because I can't do what I really want because if people really knew me, they'd think the reason my life is the way it is. Look at what you wrote. That's your story. That's the narrative that's been directing your choices, filtering your perceptions, and predicting your future. And now you're going to autopsy it. A story autopsy means taking the narrative apart and separating facts from interpretation. Most of what you think is your story is actually interpretation dressed up as fact. Something happened, then you assigned meaning to what happened, then you generalized that meaning into a rule about yourself and the world. But the meaning and the rule are not facts. They're just interpretations you could choose to change. Let's say your story is, I'm not a creative person. Where did that come from? Maybe you tried to draw something in 3rd grade and a classmate laughed. Fact. You felt embarrassed. Fact. You decided you were bad at art. Interpretation. You generalized that to mean you weren't creative. Interpretation. You stopped trying creative things. Behavior based on interpretation. You accumulated decades of evidence that you're not creative, evidence created by the interpretation, not by reality. The fact is, you drew something, someone laughed. Everything else is a story you told yourself about what that meant, and that story determined your behavior for the next 30 years. Do you see how much power you gave to an interpretation that was never actually tested or challenged? Now you're going to rewrite your origin story, not with a fantasy version where everything was perfect, but with a more accurate version that separates what happened from what you decided it meant. The same facts, different interpretation. Old version. I'm not creative because I was bad at art as a kid and everyone knew it. New version. I tried drawing once, got a negative response, and decided to avoid creative risk rather than develop skill through practice. See the difference? The new version acknowledges what happened but doesn't make it a permanent statement about your identity. Do this with every major piece of your story. Find the facts. Identify the interpretations. Rewrite the narrative in a way that gives you agency instead of stripping it away. You're not changing history. You're changing what you decided history meant. But here's where people get stuck. They think their story is their trauma, and they think their trauma is sacred and unchangeable. I'm not saying trauma isn't real. I'm not saying difficult things didn't happen to you. What I'm saying is that the story you're telling about your trauma might be just as limiting as the trauma itself. There's a difference between acknowledging that something painful happened and using that pain as the explanation for every limitation in your life. One is honest, the other is an excuse. And if you're addicted to telling the story, If you introduce yourself through your suffering, if your entire identity is built around what happened to you, then you have a problem. Because transformation requires letting go of the story. And you can't let go of something you're using as a crutch. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself 10 years from now. You're standing in a room full of people who don't know your old story. They don't know about your childhood, your failures, your suffering, your struggle. They only know who you are right now in this moment. How would you introduce yourself? What would you say about who you are if you couldn't use your past as the explanation? That's who you're becoming. The person who exists, independent of their story. The person who has a past but isn't defined by it. The person who can say, yes, this happened, and also I moved on. Write two versions of your story. The old narrative and the new truth. The old one is the story you've been telling that keeps you trapped. The new one is the story that sets you free. Read them both out loud. Feel the difference in your body. One makes you heavy, the other makes you lighter. Choose the lighter one. The void. Here's what nobody tells you about transformation. There's a phase where you're nobody. You've dismantled your old identity, but you haven't built the new one yet. You're in between. You're undefined. You're in the void. And the void is terrifying. This is the most dangerous moment in the entire process. More people quit here than anywhere else. Because being nobody feels like death. Your brain interprets it as death. And your brain's primary job is to prevent death, so it will do everything in its power to pull you back into the familiar identity, where at least you knew who you were. The void usually hits around days 5 through 8. The initial motivation has worn off. The excitement of demolition has faded. You've removed the anchors of your old life, but you haven't yet established the patterns of your new one. You wake up in the morning and you don't know who you are. You look in the mirror and you don't recognize the person looking back. Not in a good way, in an empty way. You'll feel untethered, like you're floating in space with nothing to grab onto. Your usual ways of self-soothing won't work because they were tied to your old identity. Your usual social interactions will feel wrong because you don't know how to be with people anymore. You'll question everything. You'll wonder if you made a terrible mistake. You'll think about going back. Don't go back. Sit in the void. This is not a problem to solve. This is not a feeling to escape. This is a necessary phase of transformation. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly by adding wings to its caterpillar body. It dissolves into liquid inside the cocoon. Complete dissolution. Then reorganization into something new. You're in the dissolution phase. Let yourself dissolve. Your brain is panicking because it relies on identity to make sense of the world. Identity tells your brain how to categorize information, predict outcomes, make decisions, interact with others. Without identity, your brain feels like it's failing at its job. So it's going to create symptoms designed to get you to rebuild an identity as quickly as possible, even if that means rebuilding the old one. The symptoms look like this: anxiety, because you don't know what's going to happen next. Fatigue, because your brain is working overtime trying to create new neural patterns. Rage, because you're angry at yourself for being in this uncomfortable place. Nostalgia, because your old life suddenly seems better than it was. Doubt, because maybe you weren't so bad before, and this is all unnecessary. You might feel numb, like you can't access any emotions at all. Or you might feel everything intensely, swinging between euphoria and despair. You might grieve for your old self even though you chose to let them go. This is all normal. This is all part of sitting in the void. There's a practice for this. It's called the 21-minute meditation. But it's not meditation in the traditional sense. You're not trying to clear your mind or achieve peace. You're trying to tolerate the discomfort of being undefined. Here's how it works. Sit somewhere quiet. Set a timer for 21 minutes. Close your eyes. And ask yourself, who am I without my story? Who am I without my roles, my accomplishments, my failures, my relationships? Who am I if I strip away everything I use to define myself? Don't try to answer. Just sit with the question. Let the discomfort come. Let the panic rise. Let the urge to grab onto something, anything, to define yourself come up. And don't grab. Just sit. Breathe. Be undefined. The first time you do this, it will be excruciating. You'll want to quit after 5 minutes. Do it anyway. The second time, it will be slightly less awful. The 10th time, something will shift. You'll realize that being nobody is not the same as being nothing, that beneath all the constructed identity, there's still consciousness, still awareness, still you, just you without all the stories about you. Some people need more than sitting. They need the silence experiment. For 24 hours, you don't define yourself to anyone, including yourself. If someone asks what you do, you say, I'm in transition. If someone asks about your hobbies, your politics, your preferences, you say, I'm figuring that out. If your own mind tries to label you, you notice it and let it go. You spend a full day being undefined on purpose. This is harder than it sounds because we define ourselves constantly. Every choice is an identity statement. Coffee or tea. This shirt or that shirt. Stay home or go out. We think we're just making decisions, but we're reinforcing identity with every choice. What happens when you make choices without using them to define yourself? What happens when you're just moving through the world as pure potential instead of a fixed personality? What you'll discover is that the void is not empty. It's full. Full of possibility. Full of versions of yourself that could exist if you let them. The void is not nothing. The void is everything before it becomes something. And you have to pass through it to get to the other side. Let me tell you about James. He was a college athlete, basketball, full scholarship to a Division I school. His entire identity was built around being an athlete. Every friendship, every opportunity, every piece of self-esteem. Then his junior year, he tore his ACL. Career over, not just his sports career, his identity career. For 6 months after the injury, he was in the void. He stayed in his apartment, stopped going to class, didn't know what to do with himself, because everything he knew how to do was tied to basketball. His teammates didn't know how to talk to him anymore. His coaches moved on to the next crop of players. He wasn't James the basketball player. He wasn't James the student. He wasn't anything. His therapist told him to find a new passion. His parents told him to focus on school. His friends told him to just move on. But he couldn't, because he didn't know how to be a person without being an athlete. So he sat in the void. For months, just sat there feeling empty and lost and purposeless. Then one day, he was walking across campus and he saw a flyer for a photography club. He'd never thought about photography. It had nothing to do with basketball. He went to the meeting, just to have something to do. They handed him a camera. He started taking pictures. And slowly, very slowly, Something started to grow in that empty space where his athlete identity used to be. 2 years later, he's a photographer. Not professionally, not yet, but it's who he is. He says the void was the worst and best thing that ever happened to him. Worst because it felt like dying. Best because it taught him that he could become someone completely different from who he thought he had to be, but only because he didn't try to rush through it. He let himself be nobody long enough to discover who he could become. You need to do the same thing. Journal prompt. In the space where I used to be, I feel. Write whatever comes up. Don't edit it. Don't make it pretty. Just document what it's like to be in the void. Because one day, when you're on the other side, you'll look back at this and realize it was the most important phase of your transformation. The void is not nothing. The void is the womb of your new self. Stay in it as long as you need to. Identity detox. Your body is going to rebel, not metaphorically, literally, physically. Because identity is not just psychological, it's physiological. Your nervous system has been wired to support your old identity, and now you're trying to rewire it. Your body is going to interpret this as a threat and respond accordingly. The withdrawal symptoms usually start around day 4 or 5 and peak around day 6 or 7. They look different for everyone, but there are 9 common ones: anxiety, fatigue, rage, nostalgia, doubt, numbness, grief, euphoria, and terror. You might experience all of them or just a few. You might cycle through them multiple times a day. They're not signs that something is wrong. They're signs that something is changing. Anxiety comes first for most people. It's a low-grade buzzing feeling, like you're waiting for something bad to happen. Your nervous system is on alert because all the familiar structures that told it you were safe are gone. You've changed your environment, your routines, your social patterns. From your body's perspective, you're in a new and potentially dangerous situation. So, it's keeping you in a state of hypervigilance just in case. Then comes fatigue. You'll be more tired than usual even if you're sleeping okay. This is your brain using massive amounts of energy to build new neural pathways. Creating a new identity is neurologically expensive. It takes more glucose, more oxygen, more rest than maintaining an existing identity. Your body is literally working overtime. So, if you need more sleep, that's why. Take the naps. Go to bed early. Don't try to power through. You're building a brain, and that takes resources. Rage shows up unexpectedly. You'll be irritable, short-tempered, angry at things that normally wouldn't bother you. This is your old identity fighting back. It's expressing its objection to being dismantled. The rage is also your system's response to the discomfort. You're essentially in withdrawal from an addiction, and the addiction is your old self. Your body wants to go back to what's familiar, and when you refuse, it gets angry. Nostalgia is the most seductive symptom. Your old life will suddenly seem better than it was. You'll remember all the good parts and forget the reasons you wanted to leave. Your brain is trying to trick you into going back by making the past look more appealing than the present. This is a survival mechanism. Your brain wants you to return to the known, safe thing, so it's editing your memories to make that option seem attractive. Doubt comes in waves. You'll question whether this transformation is necessary, whether you're doing it right, whether you're capable of becoming someone new. The doubt is not based on evidence. It's based on your old identity trying to reassert itself. Every time you start to build something new, doubt will show up and say, "Are you sure? Maybe you should go back. Maybe this is a mistake. Numbness is your system shutting down when the other symptoms get too intense. You'll feel disconnected from everything, like you're watching your life from behind glass. This is a dissociative response to the stress of transformation. Your nervous system is protecting you from overwhelm by reducing your emotional capacity temporarily. It's not permanent. It's just a circuit breaker. Grief will surprise you. You're mourning your old self even though you chose to let them go. This is a real loss. That person existed. They made decisions, had experiences, formed relationships. And now they're gone. You're allowed to feel sad about that even as you move forward. Grief and growth can coexist. Euphoria will come in moments. Sudden hits of excitement and energy and possibility. You'll feel like you're on the edge of something amazing. This is your system. Recognizing that change is happening and releasing dopamine in response. Enjoy it when it comes, but don't depend on it. It's not constant. It comes and goes. Terror is the big one. Not fear, terror. The kind that wakes you up at 3 in the morning with your heart racing and your thoughts spiraling. What have I done? What if I can't do this? What if I'm making everything worse? This is your brain's last-ditch effort to stop the transformation. It's throwing everything it has at you in hopes that you'll turn back. You need to track these symptoms, not to fix them, but to normalize them. Get a notebook or open a document on your phone and just note when each symptom appears. Day 6, 2 p.m. anxiety spike. Day 7, morning, extreme fatigue. Day 8, evening, nostalgia for old life. When you can see the pattern, you can recognize these symptoms as part of the process instead of evidence that you're failing. The most dangerous moment is usually day 6. This is when the withdrawal is at its peak and the relapse temptation is strongest. You'll want to call an old friend you've been distancing from. You'll want to go back to an old habit. You'll want to undo some of the changes you've made. You'll tell yourself it's not relapse, it's just one time, it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal, because day 6 is the hinge point. If you make it through day 6 without going back, you make it through. If you don't, you restart the clock. Here's your emergency protocol. If you're on day 6 and you're tempted to relapse, do these 3 things in order. First, open that voice. Recording you made where you said, "I release who I was. I claim who I'm becoming." Listen to it 3 times. Second, look at the before and after photos of your environment. Remind yourself that you already made the changes. Going back means undoing all of that. Third, call someone who knows you're transforming and tell them you're struggling. Not someone from your old life, someone who's invested in your new life. If you make it through those 3 things and you still want to relapse, then fine. Relapse. But make it conscious. Don't tell yourself it's not a big deal. Acknowledge that you're choosing to go back to your old identity because the discomfort of the new one is too much right now. And if that's true, that's information. Maybe you're not ready. Maybe you need a different approach. But at least you'll know it was a choice, not an accident. Most people won't relapse if they make it conscious. Because once you see it clearly, once you acknowledge what you're actually doing, the appeal disappears. You realize you don't actually want to go back. You just want the discomfort to stop. And going back doesn't stop the discomfort. It just trades one kind of pain for another. Create your relapse prevention plan right now. 3 actions you'll take if you feel yourself slipping. Write them down. Make them specific. If I'm tempted to relapse, I will. 1. Go for a 20-minute walk. 2. Reread my identity declaration statement. 3. Text my accountability partner. Not vague intentions, concrete actions. Because when you're in the moment, you won't be able to think clearly. You need the plan ready in advance. You're going to make it through this. The symptoms are temporary. They're intense, but they're temporary. Every day you survive the withdrawal, you get closer to the other side where your new identity starts to feel natural instead of forced, where you stop thinking about who you were and start just being who you are. But first, you have to design who that person is, and that's where we're going next. Part 3. The Blueprint Phase. Designing your new self. You can't become what you can't describe in detail. This is where most transformations fail. People have a vague sense of wanting to be different, better, happier, more successful. But vague doesn't work. Your brain needs specificity. It needs a clear, detailed, sensory-rich picture of what the new identity looks and feels and sounds like. Without that, you're just wandering in the general direction of change without a destination. Let me be extremely clear about what I mean by specificity. When most people say they want to be healthier, they're not giving their brain anything to work with. Healthier compared to what? In what ways? By what measures? Your brain can't move toward a vague concept. It can only move toward concrete details. So instead of healthier, you say, I sleep 7 hours and wake without an alarm. I eat vegetables with every meal. I move my body for 30 minutes every morning. I have energy that lasts all day without caffeine crashes. See how different that is? One is a wish. The other is a specification your brain can actually execute. So now you're going to create what I call the specification document. This is a comprehensive blueprint of your new self across 7 life domains: physical, mental, emotional, social, professional, spiritual, and environmental. For each domain, you're going to answer a simple question. What does this look like for my new identity? Start with physical. Not how your body looks, but how your body functions and how you inhabit it. Does your new self move differently, stand differently, have different energy levels? What's the physical presence of this person? Are they strong, flexible, energetic? Do they wake up early or stay up late? How do they dress? How do they care for their body? Be specific. Don't write, I'm healthier. Write, I wake up at 5:30 without an alarm, feeling rested. I do 20 minutes of movement every morning. I eat foods that give me sustained energy. I wear clothes that make me feel capable and confident. I stand with my shoulders back and make eye contact when I talk to people. See the difference? One is a wish. The other is a specification. Mental domain is next. How does your new self think? What's their relationship with learning, with challenge, with problem solving? Are they curious, focused, creative? How do they process information? What do they read, watch, listen to? How do they make decisions? Write it out. I'm someone who asks questions instead of assuming I know. I read for 30 minutes every day. I can focus on a single task for 90 minutes without distraction. When I encounter a problem, I get interested instead of anxious. I learn by doing, not just by consuming information. Emotional domain is where people get vague again. They say, I'm happy, or I'm calm. But emotions are not destinations, they're responses. So instead, describe your emotional range and regulation. How does your new self handle difficult emotions? How do they experience joy? What's their baseline state? Try this. I feel my emotions fully without being controlled by them. When I'm angry, I notice it, name it, and decide what to do with it. When I'm sad, I let myself be sad without spiraling into depression. When I'm joyful, I let myself be fully present in that joy. My baseline state is grounded and curious about what comes next. Social domain is about relationships and how you exist in relation to others. Who is your new self with friends, with family, with strangers? What kind of connections do they form? How do they communicate? What boundaries do they have? Be honest about this one. I choose relationships based on mutual respect and genuine connection, not obligation or history. I'm comfortable being alone and comfortable being with others. I speak directly and kindly. I don't try to manage other people's emotions. I show up as myself, and people can take it or leave it. Professional domain isn't just about your job, though it includes that. It's about how you work, what you create, what you contribute. What's your new self's relationship with work? How do they define success? What do they value in their professional life? Write it clearly. I do work that matters to me, even if it doesn't pay the most or impress other people. I set boundaries around my time and energy. I deliver excellent work because I care about excellence, not because I'm seeking approval. I collaborate well, but I don't need consensus to move forward. Spiritual domain doesn't necessarily mean religious, though it can. It means your sense of meaning, purpose, connection to something larger than yourself. What does your new self believe about life, about their place in the world, about what matters? This might sound like, I believe I'm here to create, to connect, to grow. I find meaning in helping others find their own path. I'm connected to something larger than my individual concerns, whether that's nature or community or the flow of life itself. I trust that things unfold as they need to. Environmental domain is about the spaces and contexts where you exist. Where does your new self spend their time? What does their home look like? Their workspace? Where do they go? What do they surround themselves with? Get detailed. I live in a space that's simple, beautiful, and functional. Everything in my environment has a purpose or brings me joy. I spend time outside every day. My workspace supports deep focus. I'm intentional about where I go and what I expose myself to. Now here's the crucial part. Once you've written descriptions for all 7 domains, you're going to turn them into the future self interview. Imagine you're interviewing yourself 5 years from now, after you've been living as this new identity for a while. What would they say about each domain? How would they describe their typical day? What advice would they give you right now? Write this interview out. All 50 questions. What time do you wake up? What's the first thing you do? How do you spend your mornings? What work are you doing? Who are the people in your life? What do you do for fun? What challenges are you facing? How do you handle stress? What are you proud of? What are you still working on? The more specific you get, the more real it becomes. Your brain can't tell the difference between a vividly imagined future and a remembered past. If you describe your new identity in enough detail, your brain starts treating it as something that already exists. And once your brain thinks it exists, it starts moving you toward it automatically. This is what happened with David. He was an accountant, 41 years old, good at his job but completely unfulfilled. He'd always wanted to be an artist, but had convinced himself it wasn't practical. For his blueprint, he wrote a 2,000-word specification document describing himself as a working artist. Not a hobbyist, Not someone who painted on weekends, but someone whose primary identity was artist. He described his morning routine: waking early, making coffee, going straight to his studio. He described his workspace: natural light, organized chaos, the smell of paint. He described his mindset: curious, playful, willing to fail. He described his relationships: other artists, people who understood the creative life. He described his finances: modest but sufficient, cobbled together from commissions and teaching and part-time work. Then he read this document every morning for a week. Just read it. Didn't try to make it happen. Just read it. And something shifted. He started noticing opportunities he'd been ignoring. A community art space looking for instructors. A gallery looking for new artists. A friend who needed illustrations for a project. He started saying yes to things that aligned with the blueprint and no to things that didn't. 2 years later, he's not a full-time artist yet, but he's close. He quit his accounting job and does bookkeeping 3 days a week. The other 4 days, he paints. He has had 2 small shows. He teaches 1 class a week. He's making less money than he used to, but he says he feels alive for the first time in 20 years. And it started with the blueprint, with getting specific about who he wanted to become. Your blueprint document needs to be at least 2,000 words. Not because there's magic in that number, but because you can't be specific enough in anything less. Take the time, write it all out, then read it aloud to one trusted person, someone who will take it seriously, someone who won't try to talk you out of it. Hearing yourself describe your new identity to another person makes it more real than keeping it in your head. This is your map. This is what you're building toward. Everything that comes next is about making this blueprint real. Part 4. The integration phase. The new self goes public. You've been becoming in private. You've done the internal work, the demolition, the void, the blueprint. But eventually, transformation has to go public. You can't hide in your apartment being your new self and expect it to stick. Your new identity needs to be tested in the real world, with real people, in real situations. And that's terrifying, but it's necessary. Going public doesn't mean you need to make an announcement or throw a party or post something dramatic on social media. It just means you start showing up as your new self in spaces where people knew your old self. You stop performing the old identity and start inhabiting the new one. And you let people react however they're going to react. The first time you do this, it will feel fake. You'll feel like you're pretending, playing a role, trying on a costume that doesn't quite fit. That's normal. Embodiment precedes authenticity. You have to act like your new self before you feel like your new self. The feelings come after the actions, not before. Here's what this looks like in practice. You show up to a family dinner as your new self. Maybe your new self doesn't laugh at jokes that aren't funny. Maybe your new self doesn't participate in gossip. Maybe your new self leaves early instead of staying out of obligation. Your family will notice. They'll make comments. You're being quiet tonight. What's wrong with you? You're not fun anymore. Let them say it. Don't defend, don't explain, don't apologize. Just be different and let them adjust. Or you go back to work after a week off, and your coworkers expect the same person who left. But you're not that person anymore. Maybe your new self doesn't check email after 6. Maybe your new self doesn't volunteer for every project. Maybe your new self speaks up in meetings instead of staying silent. People will be confused. They might push back. That's not like you. Since when do you say no? Good. Let them be confused. Their confusion is not your problem to solve. The key is consistency. You can't show up as your new self once and then revert when people seem uncomfortable. You have to be the new you everywhere, with everyone, all the time. That's how it becomes real. That's how people stop seeing it as a phase and start seeing it as who you are. But you need a strategy for handling resistance, because resistance will come. There are predictable sources: family, friends, colleagues, strangers, and yourself. Each one requires a different approach. Family resistance is usually rooted in fear and nostalgia. Your family has known you longest, and they're invested in the stability of your identity because it helps them maintain their own. When you change, it disrupts the family system. They'll try to restore equilibrium by pulling you back into your old role. The response is gentle but firm boundaries. I understand this is confusing for you. I'm still me, just a different version. I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. Friend resistance often comes disguised as concern. Are you okay? Is something going on? I'm worried about you. What they're really saying is, your change is making me uncomfortable because it reminds me that I'm not changing. The response is honesty without apology. I'm better than I've been in a long time. I'm making changes that are right for me. If that's hard for you, I understand, but I'm not going back. Colleague resistance is about professional identity. People at work have expectations based on your past performance and behavior. When you violate those expectations, they feel destabilized. The response is professional clarity. I'm approaching things differently now. My work will still be excellent, but how I do it might look different. I need you to give me room to operate in this new way. Stranger resistance is the easiest, because strangers don't have an investment in your old identity. They only see who you're being now. Use strangers to practice being your new self. Coffee shops, stores, random interactions. Be the person you're becoming with people who never knew who you were. It will feel more natural because there's no history to contradict. Self-resistance is the hardest. This is when you resist your own transformation. The imposter syndrome spike happens here, usually around days 15 to 17. You're showing up as your new self and it's working, and suddenly your brain says, "Who do you think you are?" You're not really this person. You're faking it. Everyone can tell. This is embarrassing. The imposter syndrome spike is your old identity's final stand. It knows it's losing, so it's throwing everything it has at you one last time. The response is to recognize it for what it is: a defense mechanism, not the truth. Every time the thought comes up, you notice it and say, "That's my old identity trying to reclaim control. I acknowledge the thought and I'm moving forward anyway." You need scripts ready for the moments when people push back. Not long explanations, just short, clear statements that shut down the conversation without engaging in debate. Things like, "I'm making changes that are right for me. I'm doing this differently now. I understand you're not used to this version of me. This is who I am now." Practice saying these out loud until they feel natural. But here's what you also need to understand. Some people won't adjust. Some relationships won't survive your transformation. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to come with you into your new life. Some people are there for a chapter, not the whole book. If someone can't accept the new you, if they keep trying to force you back into your old shape, you have to decide whether that relationship is worth keeping. This is what Sarah discovered. She'd been friends with the same group of women since college, almost 20 years. They had history, shared experiences, inside jokes, but they also had fixed roles. Sarah was the funny one, the one who made self-deprecating jokes, the one who could be counted on to be a little bit of a mess. It was affectionate, but it was also limiting. When Sarah started her transformation, she stopped playing that role. She stopped making jokes at her own expense. She stopped showing up late and flustered. She stopped being the one everyone could feel superior to. And her friends didn't like it. They made comments. "You're so serious now. What happened to fun, Sarah? You think you're better than us." She tried to explain. She tried to bring them along, but they weren't interested. They wanted the old Sarah back because the old Sarah made them feel good about themselves. The new Sarah challenged them by example. So she had a choice: shrink back into her old role to keep the friendship, or maintain her new identity and let the friendship go. She chose the latter. It hurt. She grieved those friendships. But she also knew that going back would hurt more. And here's what she didn't expect. When she let go of those relationships, new ones showed up. People who liked the real her, not the performance she'd been doing for 2 decades. People who supported her growth instead of resisting it. You might face the same choice. If you do, choose yourself. Choose your transformation. The right people will meet you where you are. The wrong people will fall away. And that's not failure, that's pruning. Before you go public, prepare yourself emotionally. This is not going to be comfortable. People will say things that sting. Some will laugh, some will judge, some will dismiss you. Let them. Their response is information about them, not about you. The people who matter will adjust. The people who don't adjust don't matter. Now go. Show up as your new self 3 times this week. 3 different contexts. Document how it feels, what people say, how you respond. This is your public debut. Make it real. The identity proof. Document you've been changing for weeks now. You've done the work. But there's a problem. Your brain doesn't entirely believe it yet. Because memory is unreliable and feelings are temporary. And unless you have tangible proof that you've transformed, your brain will default back to thinking you're still the same person you were on day 1. So now you're going to compile evidence. Objective, measurable, undeniable evidence that you are not who you were. This is the transformation dossier. And it's one of the most important documents you'll create because it becomes the proof you can return to any time doubt shows up. Start with before and after comparisons across 21 metrics. These aren't all going to be relevant to everyone, so pick the ones that matter to your transformation and add your own. Physical metrics, energy levels, sleep quality, physical activity, how your body feels. Mental metrics, focus capacity, decision-making clarity, learning engagement, creative output. Emotional metrics, baseline mood, emotional range, stress response, joy capacity. Social metrics, quality of relationships, number of meaningful connections, communication patterns, boundary maintenance. Professional metrics, work output, work satisfaction, advancement toward goals. Spiritual metrics, sense of meaning, connection to purpose, alignment with values. Environmental metrics, how your space supports you, where you spend time, what you surround yourself with. For each metric, write what it was like on day 1 and what it's like now on day 21. Be honest, not everything will have improved. Some things might actually be harder now because you're no longer avoiding or numbing. That's okay. The point is to document change, not to prove perfection. Then track behavioral evidence. Remember those 21 behaviors you identified as part of your new identity? Go back and check how many you actually implemented. Which ones are automatic now? Which ones still require effort? Which ones did you skip? The behaviors you're actually doing consistently are proof of transformation. The behaviors you're still struggling with are information about what needs more attention. Make a list of every new action you've taken in the past 21 days that your old self wouldn't have taken. Every conversation you had that you would have avoided. Every decision you made that contradicted your old patterns. Every moment where you chose the new identity over the old one. This list is evidence. It shows that you're not just thinking differently, you're doing differently. Now comes the part most people skip but shouldn't. External validation. Reach out to 3 people who've known you throughout this process, people who've seen the change from the outside. Ask them directly, "What's different about me?" Be specific. Don't lead them. Don't tell them what you want to hear. Just ask and listen. Their observations will surprise you. They'll notice things you don't. They'll see shifts in your energy, your presence, your way of being that you can't see from inside the process. Write down what they say, word for word. These testimonials are some of the most powerful proof you'll have because they're not filtered through your own perception. If you're someone who can handle it, do photo and video documentation. Take a photo of yourself today. Compare it to a photo from day 1. Look at your face, your posture, your eyes. Do you look different? Most people do. There's something in the expression that's shifted, a weight that's lifted, or a light that's turned on. Better yet, record a video of yourself talking about your transformation. Just 2 minutes. Talk about who you were, what you changed, who you're becoming, how you feel different, what you've learned. Save this video. Watch it any time you need to remember that this actually happened, that you actually did this. Compile everything into one document or folder, the metrics, the behaviors, the list of new actions, the testimonials, the photos, the video. This is your transformation dossier. It's proof, not for anyone else, for you. For the moments when your brain tries to tell you nothing really changed. For the moments when you slip and think you're back at square one. You can open this document and see, objectively, that you're not. You're different. The evidence is here. But evidence alone isn't enough to maintain transformation. You need a system. You need protection. Protecting the new self. The transformation isn't over. In fact, it's never over. Because identity isn't a destination you arrive at and then maintain effortlessly. It's a practice. It's something you do every day. And if you stop doing it, if you stop being intentional, your old patterns will creep back in. Not because you're weak or you failed, but because your brain is wired for efficiency, and your old patterns are more efficient than your new ones. For now. That's why you need a maintenance protocol, a system for checking in, for catching regression before it becomes relapse, for keeping your new identity alive and active instead of letting it fade into a memory of something you did once. First, you need to know the warning signs. There are 7 red flags that indicate you're slipping back toward your old identity. 1. You're avoiding discomfort again. You start choosing the easy path over the growth path. 2. You're back in old environments without protection. You're spending time in places or with people that reinforce your old self. 3. You're neglecting your new behaviors. The 21 actions you committed to, you're skipping them. 4. You're telling your old story. You introduce yourself through your past instead of your present. 5. You're feeling nostalgic for your old life without remembering why you left. 6. You're making decisions based on obligation instead of alignment. 7. You don't recognize yourself in a good way. You feel like you're performing again instead of being. If you notice any of these, you don't panic, you adjust. The maintenance checklist gives you a structure for regular identity reviews. Weekly, you ask yourself, did I live as my new self this week? Where did I succeed? Where did I slip? What needs to change? Monthly, you revisit your blueprint document. Is it still accurate? Has your new identity evolved? Do you need to update the specification? Yearly, you do a full transformation audit. How far have you come? What's next? Who are you becoming now? But the hardest part of maintenance is handling life events without losing yourself. Because life doesn't stop happening just because you've transformed. You'll face stress, loss, change, crisis. And when you do, your brain will want to revert to old coping mechanisms. That's when you're most vulnerable. You need a resilience plan for major life events. If you lose a job, have a health crisis, end a relationship, experience grief, how will you protect your new identity? The plan has 3 parts: anchor behaviors, emergency contacts, and identity recommitment. Anchor behaviors are the non-negotiables, the things you do every day no matter what, because they keep you tethered to your new self even when everything else is chaos. For most people, it's 3 to 5 behaviors. Morning routine, physical movement, connection with someone who knows your transformation. These don't stop even when life gets hard, especially when life gets hard. Emergency contacts are people you can call when you feel yourself slipping. Not people who knew your old self, people who know your new self and will remind you of who you've become. You give them permission in advance to be direct with you, to say, you're reverting, you're telling your old story, you're making decisions from your old identity. Come back. Identity recommitment is a ritual you do whenever you feel unmoored. You take out your transformation dossier. You read your blueprint document. You listen to that voice recording. You look at the photos. You remember, I did this once. I can do it again. I am this person. Not was. Am. Let me tell you about Linda. She transformed at 47, lost 70 pounds, left a toxic marriage, started a business, became someone completely new. Then 2 years later, her mother died. And in her grief, she started reverting, eating the foods she'd given up, talking to her ex-husband, letting the business slide. Within 3 months, she'd gained back 40 pounds and was seriously considering moving back in with her ex. That's when she pulled out her transformation dossier. She looked at the before and after photos. She read what her friends had said about her transformation. She remembered who she'd become and why. And she caught herself. She recommitted to her anchor behaviors. She called her emergency contacts. She reminded herself that grief doesn't require going back to old patterns. She could grieve as her new self. It took another 3 months to stabilize, but she did. And now she's maintained her new identity through several other major life events: her father's death, the pandemic, a business partner conflict. Each time, she uses the maintenance protocol. Each time, she chooses to stay in her new identity instead of reverting to the old one. You're going to face tests too. Some will be small. Some will be massive. The maintenance protocol is what gets you through. So create your protection plan right now. Identify your 7 warning signs. Set up your weekly, monthly, and yearly review schedule. Choose your 3 anchor behaviors. Identify your 2 to 3 emergency contacts. Write out your identity recommitment ritual. Then schedule your first 3 maintenance check-ins right now. Put them in your calendar, day 30, day 60, day 90. These are non-negotiable appointments with yourself. You're not hoping you'll remember. You're making it systematic. Because here's the truth. Maintaining transformation is harder than creating it. The initial motivation is gone. The novelty has worn off. You're just living your life as this new person, and life is still life. It's still hard sometimes. It's still messy. The difference is you don't have to be who you were. You can be who you've become, but only if you protect it. The behavioral inventory. Identity is not what you think. It's what you do repeatedly. You can have the most beautiful blueprint in the world, the clearest vision of your new self. But if your daily behaviors don't match that vision, you're still living as your old self. So now we're going to get brutally specific about what your new self actually does every single day. The behavior cascade is a powerful concept. One action triggers 10 more. If you wake up early, you have time to exercise. If you exercise, you feel energized. If you feel energized, you eat better. If you eat better, you think more clearly. If you think more clearly, you make better decisions. If you make better decisions, you build momentum. One behavior cascades into an entire day of aligned actions. The inverse is also true. If you hit snooze, you wake up rushed. If you wake up rushed, you skip breakfast. If you skip breakfast, your blood sugar crashes. If your blood sugar crashes, you feel irritable. If you feel irritable, you snap at people. If you snap at people, you feel guilty. If you feel guilty, you comfort yourself with old patterns. One behavior cascades into an entire day of regression. So your job is to identify the keystone behaviors, the ones that start the cascade in the right direction. For most people, the first 90 minutes of the day determine everything. This is your morning architecture, and it needs to be designed with precision. Your morning should answer one question: who am I today? And the answer should come through action, not thought. You don't wake up and think about being your new self. You wake up and do the things your new self does. The identity follows the behavior, not the other way around. Let's build your morning. First behavior: wake time. Not when your alarm goes off, but when you actually get out of bed. No snoozing, no scrolling, no negotiating. Your new self has a wake time, and they honor it. Pick a time that gives you at least 90 minutes before you need to be anywhere or do anything for anyone else. This is your sacred time. Second behavior: hydration. Before coffee, before food, before anything else, you drink water. A full glass. This signals to your body that you're awake and intentional. It's a small thing, but small things create identity. Third behavior: movement. Not a full workout, though it can be. Just 10 minutes of intentional physical activity. Stretching, walking, yoga, push-ups, dancing, whatever makes your body feel alive. This is not about fitness. This is about embodiment. Your new self inhabits their body differently than your old self did. Fourth behavior: silence or stillness. 5 minutes minimum. No phone, no music, no input. Just you sitting or standing in silence, being present. This is when you connect with who you're becoming. This is when you remember your blueprint. This is when you set your intention for the day. Fifth behavior, creation before consumption. Before you check email, before you scroll social media, before you consume anyone else's agenda, you create something. Write one page, record one idea, draw something, make progress on your project. This is about claiming your mental energy for your own priorities before the world takes it from you. These 5 behaviors, done in the first 90 minutes, create an identity cascade. By the time you start your day, you've already been your new self 5 times. You have momentum. You have proof. You're not hoping to be different today. You already are different. Now comes the non-negotiable list. These are the 7 daily behaviors that are identity foundational. They're not optional. They're not if you have time. They're the minimum viable version of your new identity. If you do nothing else, you do these 7 things. For each person, the list is different because each transformation is different. But here's the framework. 1 behavior for physical identity, 1 for mental identity, 1 for emotional identity, 1 for social identity, 1 for professional identity, 1 for spiritual identity, 1 for environmental identity. 7 domains, 7 behaviors. A physical non-negotiable might be, I move my body for 20 minutes. A mental non-negotiable might be, I read for 15 minutes. An emotional non-negotiable might be, I name 3 emotions I'm feeling today. A social non-negotiable might be, I have 1 meaningful conversation. A professional non-negotiable might be, I do 1 hour of focused work. A spiritual non-negotiable might be, I spend 5 minutes in gratitude. An environmental non-negotiable might be, I keep my space clean and organized. These are minimums. You can do more, but you cannot do less. These 7 behaviors are the floor, not the ceiling, and they happen every single day, no matter what. Sick? You do them. Traveling? You do them. Busy? You do them. Tired? You do them. They're non-negotiable because they're identity-defining, but 7 behaviors is not enough for 21 days. You need 21 behaviors total, 1 new behavior for each remaining day of your transformation. These are called implementation intentions, and they work because they remove decision fatigue. You don't wake up and wonder what you should do today to be your new self. You already know. You decided in advance. Here's how you create them. For each day from now until day 21, assign 1 specific new behavior that your new self would do. Make it small enough that you can't fail, but meaningful enough that it matters. Day 8. Have a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Day 9. Wear something that makes you feel like your new self. Day 10. Spend 30 minutes on a creative project. Day 11. Say no to something you would have said yes to. Day 12. Reach out to someone who represents your new identity. The key is specificity. Not be more social, but have coffee with 1 new person. Not work on my project, but write 500 words of my book. Not take care of myself, but go to bed by 10 p.m. Vague intentions create vague results. Specific behaviors create specific transformation. Write out all 21 behaviors right now, 1 for each day. Put them in your calendar, set reminders, make them unavoidable. Then on day 8, you wake up and you know exactly what you're doing today to be your new self. There's no question, no debate, no room for procrastination. You just do it. The belief transplant. You become what you believe you are. Not what you want to be, not what you try to be, but what you actually believe about yourself at the deepest level. And most of your beliefs about yourself are invisible. They run in the background like code, determining what you think is possible, what you attempt, what you give up on, what you never even consider. These beliefs didn't come from nowhere. They came from experiences, from what people told you, from what you told yourself after failures or successes. And they've been reinforced thousands of times until they feel like facts. But they're not facts. They're just beliefs. And beliefs can be changed. The problem is, you can't just decide to believe something different and expect your brain to cooperate. Your brain requires evidence. It needs proof that the new belief is true before it will update the old one. So you can't just affirm your way into new beliefs. You have to build evidence for them. Let's start by digging up your current beliefs. This is belief archaeology, and it requires honesty. What do you actually believe about yourself? Not what you wish you believed, not what you tell other people, but the real beliefs that govern your behavior. Finish these sentences without filtering. I'm the kind of person who always. I'm the kind of person who never. I can't. Because I'm not enough to. People like me don't. I'll never be able to. Look at what you wrote. Those are your limiting beliefs. They're the invisible ceiling on your potential. And they're probably in one of 7 categories. Belief about capability. I'm not smart enough, talented enough, skilled enough. Belief about worthiness. I don't deserve success, love, respect. Belief about possibility. People like me don't get those opportunities. Belief about permanence. I've always been this way. I'll always be this way. Belief about control. I can't change my circumstances. Belief about risk. If I try, I'll fail, and it will be devastating. Belief about identity. This is just who I am. Each of these beliefs has an antidote, a new belief that's equally valid, better supported by evidence, and more useful for your transformation. The work is identifying the antidote and then building proof for it until your brain accepts it as true. Let's take one common limiting belief. I'm not disciplined enough to follow through. The antidote is, I'm someone who completes what they start. But you can't just say that and expect it to stick. You need evidence. So you create evidence deliberately. You choose something small to complete. Not a huge project, just something manageable that has a clear start and finish. You could read a short book. You could do a 7-day challenge. You could complete one small home improvement project. The content doesn't matter. What matters is that you finish it, then you document it. You write down, I said I would do this, and I did it. I completed it. That's one piece of evidence. Then you do it again. Another small completion. Then another. After 5 completions, you have a pattern. After 10, you have proof. Your brain can't argue with proof. It has to update the belief. You're not someone who never follows through. You're someone who has followed through 10 times in the last month. The new belief has evidence. The old belief doesn't. You do this for every major limiting belief. Let's say you believe, I'm not creative. The antidote, I'm someone who generates original ideas. The evidence-building process. Every day for 21 days, you create something. A sketch, a paragraph, a photo, a solution to a problem, anything. You keep a log. By day 21, you have 21 pieces of evidence that you're creative. Your brain has to update. Or maybe you believe, I'm bad with money. Antidote, I'm someone who manages resources wisely. Evidence, you track your spending for 21 days. You make one wise financial decision each day. You save a small amount consistently. By day 21, you have proof. The old belief loses its power. This is not positive thinking. This is evidence-based belief change. And it works because you're not arguing with your brain. You're showing it proof. Your brain doesn't care about affirmations. It cares about data. Give it better data, and it will update its beliefs. Here's your assignment. Identify 7 limiting beliefs. Write them down. Then write the antidote for each one. Then design a 21-day evidence-building process for 1 belief per week. You're not trying to change all 7 beliefs at once. You're systematically replacing them, one at a time, with beliefs that serve your transformation. And here's what you'll discover. As the beliefs change, everything else changes. Opportunities you couldn't see before become visible. Actions that seemed impossible become doable. Risks that seemed terrifying become manageable. Because the beliefs were the constraint, not reality. Change the beliefs, and reality expands. The daily operating system. Your days create your life, not your big decisions, not your dramatic moments, but the mundane, repeated, ordinary actions you take every single day. So if you want a transformed life, you need a transformed day. You need a daily operating system that runs your new identity automatically. Most people's days are chaos. They wake up without a plan, react to whatever comes at them, make decisions based on urgency instead of importance, and collapse into bed feeling like they accomplished nothing meaningful. That's not laziness. That's lack of architecture. Your day needs structure the same way a building needs a frame. The structure has 3 anchors: morning ritual, midday check-in, and evening review. These are the 3 moments when you consciously reconnect with your identity and make sure you're living as your new self, not defaulting to your old one. We already covered the morning ritual. That's your identity foundation for the day. You wake up, you do your 5 behaviors, you establish who you are. By the time your day officially starts, you're already in your new identity. The morning creates momentum. The midday check-in is different. This is when you pause, usually around noon or 1, and ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Am I being my new self today, or am I performing my old self? 2. What do I need right now to stay aligned? 3. What's one action I can take in the next hour that my new self would take? This check-in takes 5 minutes maximum. You can do it while walking, while eating lunch, while sitting in your car. But you do it, because without it, you'll drift. The morning momentum will fade, and you'll slip back into autopilot. The midday check-in is a pattern interrupt. It reminds you who you're being. It course corrects before you get too far off track. The evening review is when you close the loop. Before bed, you spend 10 minutes reflecting on the day. What did I do today that aligned with my new identity? What did I do that didn't? Where did I succeed? Where did I struggle? What do I need to do differently tomorrow? This is not about judgment or beating yourself up. It's about data collection. You're tracking your transformation. You're noticing patterns. You're learning what works and what doesn't. And you're making micro adjustments every single day instead of waiting until you've completely derailed to notice something's wrong. But the operating system is more than just these 3 anchors. It's also about time blocking for transformation. You need to look at your day and ask, where is the time for my new identity? If your new self is a writer, where is the writing time? If your new self is physically healthy, where is the movement time? If your new self is connected and relational, where is the people time? Most people try to fit their transformation into the gaps of their existing life. That doesn't work. You need dedicated time, protected time, non-negotiable time. And that means something else has to go. You can't add new behaviors without subtracting old ones. Time is finite. If your new self gets 2 hours a day, your old self loses 2 hours a day. What are you willing to give up? For most people, the answer is scrolling, television, or unstructured time spent on activities that don't align with who they're becoming. That's not sacrifice, that's editing. You're removing the things that support your old identity to make room for things that support your new one. Here's your ideal day blueprint. Take out a piece of paper or open a document. Draw a 24-hour timeline. Now block out the non-negotiables: sleep, work, essential responsibilities. What's left is your discretionary time. How much is there? 4 hours? 6? 2? However much you have, allocate it intentionally. Your new self gets first claim on that time. Old habits and activities that don't serve your transformation get what's left, if anything. So if you have 4 hours of discretionary time, maybe 2 hours go to your keystone behaviors. 1 hour goes to relationships that matter. 30 minutes goes to rest and restoration, and 30 minutes is buffer for the unexpected. Television, social media, time-wasting activities. They don't make the cut unless they actively support your transformation. This will feel restrictive at first, like you're giving up freedom. But you're not. You're giving up default behaviors that were running automatically without your consent. You're taking back control of your time and using it to build the life you actually want. That's not restriction, that's liberation. Now execute this ideal day for 48 hours straight, not someday. Not when it's convenient. In the next 2 days, set it up tonight and run it tomorrow and the day after. See what happens. See where you struggle. See what needs adjustment. Then adjust and run it again. The goal is not perfection. The goal is rhythm. You're building a daily rhythm that makes your new identity inevitable. After 2 weeks of this rhythm, it becomes automatic. After a month, it's just how you live. You don't think about it anymore. You just do it. That's when the operating system is installed. Part 5. The Advanced Integration Phase. The Competence Gap. Here's the paradox. You're becoming someone new, but you don't yet have all the skills that person needs. You've claimed the identity, but you haven't earned the competence. And that gap between who you're being and what you can do creates massive discomfort. This is the competence gap, and it's where a lot of transformations stall. Let's say your new self is a confident public speaker. You've updated your identity. You believe you're that person. But you've only given 3 presentations in your life, and they were all disasters. The identity says confident speaker. The skill level says terrified amateur. That's the gap. Most people respond to this gap by retreating. They think, I'm not ready yet. I need more training, more practice, more preparation before I can really be that person. So they go back to being their old self until they feel competent enough to be their new self, and they stay there forever. Because competence doesn't come before embodiment. It comes after. You don't become confident and then act confident. You act confident and then become confident. The action precedes the feeling. The behavior precedes the skill. You have to be willing to be bad at being your new self for a while. You have to embrace the awkwardness of inhabiting an identity you haven't fully grown into yet. This is what embodiment means. You put on the identity like a costume, even though it doesn't fit perfectly yet. You walk like your new self walks, talk like they talk, make decisions like they make decisions. And at first it feels fake. It feels like you're performing. And you are. But performance, repeated consistently, becomes reality. The science backs this up. Studies on power posing show that if you stand like a confident person for 2 minutes, your hormone levels actually change. Your testosterone goes up, your cortisol goes down, and you start to feel more confident. The body leads, the brain follows. The same principle applies to identity. You embody your new self, and the feelings and skills follow. But you can't just embody, you also have to build. The competence gap has to close eventually. So you're doing 2 things simultaneously: embodying the identity before you're ready, and building the skills as fast as you can. Here's how skill building works in real time. You identify the 5 core competencies your new identity requires. If you're becoming an entrepreneur, maybe it's sales, marketing, financial management, product development, and leadership. If you're becoming an artist, maybe it's technique, vision, criticism, business, and showing your work. Whatever your new identity is, there are 5 core things you need to be able to do. For each competency, you commit to the 10,000 rep rule. Not 10,000 hours, 10,000 repetitions. You're going to do the thing 10,000 times, and by the time you're done, you'll be competent. This sounds impossible, but it's not. If you do something 10 times a day, you hit 10,000 in less than 3 years. If you do it 30 times a day, you hit it in a year. The key is to start counting. Every time you do the thing, you log it. Rep 1, Rep 2, Rep 3. You're building both skill and evidence. The evidence says, I've done this 100 times. I'm not a beginner anymore. I've done this 1,000 times. I'm getting good at this. I've done this 10,000 times. I'm an expert. But you don't wait until you're an expert to embody the identity. You embody the identity on Rep 1. You're an entrepreneur before you make your first sale. You're an artist before you finish your first good piece. You're a confident person before you feel confident. The identity gives you permission to do the reps. The reps build the skill. The skill validates the identity. Let me tell you about Keisha. She decided at 34 that she wanted to be a public speaker, not as a hobby, as a profession. She wanted to get paid to speak on stages to audiences of hundreds or thousands. The problem was, she'd never done it. She had 0 speaking experience, 0 credibility, 0 confidence. But she committed to the identity anyway. She updated her LinkedIn profile, public speaker. She told people at parties, I'm a speaker. She dressed like a speaker, carried herself like a speaker, thought like a speaker. And then she started doing the reps. She joined Toastmasters and spoke every week. She volunteered to speak at local community events for free. She did lunch and learns at her company. She recorded herself and watched the videos, cringing but learning. She did Facebook Lives from her living room. She spoke at her church, her kids' school, anywhere that would let her practice. In the first year, she gave 87 talks. Most of them were terrible. Most of the audiences were tiny. But she logged every single one, Rep 1 through Rep 87. By month 18, she was getting good. People started sharing her videos. She got invited to speak at a conference, paid $500. By year 2, she'd given 200 talks and was booking paid gigs regularly. By year 3, she was making 6 figures as a speaker. The identity came first, the skill came second, the income came third. But none of it would have happened if she'd waited to feel ready. She embodied the speaker identity on Rep 1 when she had no business calling herself a speaker, and the embodiment gave her permission to do the reps that built the skill. So here's your stretch assignment. Identify one thing your new self would do that terrifies you because you don't feel competent enough yet. Then do it anyway. This week, not when you're ready. Now. Do it badly. Do it awkwardly. Do it with trembling hands and a shaky voice, but do it, and count it. Rep 1. That's how you close the competence gap. You don't wait for it to close. You close it by doing the thing you're not ready for over and over until you are ready. And in the meantime, you embody the identity like it's already true. Because it is. You're just growing into it. The identity stress test. Your new self isn't real until it's been tested under pressure. Right now, you've been practicing your transformation in controlled conditions. You've cleaned up your environment, curated your social circle, structured your days. But life doesn't stay controlled. Stress comes, chaos comes, crisis comes. And when it does, you find out whether your new identity is solid or whether it collapses back into your old one. So you're going to test it deliberately. You're going to create challenging situations on purpose before life creates them for you. These are your stress tests, and you need 3 of them, escalating in difficulty. Stress test 1, the old environment revisit. You're going to go back to a place where your old identity lived. Maybe it's your hometown, your old office, your ex's neighborhood, the bar where you used to hang out. Somewhere that has strong associations with who you used to be, and you're going to show up there as your new self. This is harder than it sounds. Environments have powerful associative triggers. Your brain remembers who you were in that place, and it will try to make you be that person again. You'll feel the pull to act like your old self, talk like your old self, fall into old patterns. That's the test. Can you be your new self in a place that remembers your old self? You'll know you passed if you can walk through that environment and maintain your new identity without effort. If old friends or acquaintances interact with you and you respond as your new self, not your old self. If you leave that place and you still feel like who you've become, not who you were. Stress test 2, the confrontation exercise. You're going to have a difficult conversation with someone who doubts your change or who's invested in you staying the same. Maybe it's a parent who keeps treating you like a child. Maybe it's a friend who makes jokes about your transformation. Maybe it's a colleague who doesn't take your new direction seriously. You're going to sit down with that person and tell them directly, "This is who I am now." I understand if that's confusing or uncomfortable for you, but I need you to accept it or step back. You're not asking permission. You're not defending your choices. You're simply stating the truth and letting them decide how they want to respond. This test is about your ability to hold your ground when someone pushes back. Your old self would have accommodated, explained, maybe backed down to keep the peace. Your new self states the truth and lets the other person have their reaction. You pass this test if you can have the conversation without shrinking, without over-explaining, without needing them to understand or approve. Stress test 3, the high-stakes decision. You're going to make a significant choice that your old self never would have made. Quit a job, end a relationship, move to a new city, start a business, whatever represents a meaningful departure from your old life. Not impulsively, but deliberately. This is the biggest test because it has real consequences. You're not just practicing your new identity in a conversation or a visit. You're betting on it with your actual life. You're saying, "I trust who I've become," enough to make decisions from that identity, even if those decisions look risky or foolish to people who knew the old me. You pass this test when you make the decision, and don't second-guess it. When you can stand in the uncertainty or difficulty that follows and think, this is aligned with who I am. I made the right choice for my new self, even if it's the wrong choice for my old self. Execute all 3 tests within 72 hours. 1 test per day for 3 days. This is intensive, but it needs to be. You're putting your transformation through a crucible to see if it holds. And if it doesn't, if you fail one of these tests, that's valuable information. It tells you where your new identity is still weak, where you need more practice, where the old patterns are still waiting to reclaim you. When Michael did his stress tests, he failed the first one. He went back to his old neighborhood, and within an hour he was acting exactly like his old self, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, talking about the past, falling into familiar patterns. He got in his car afterward and realized, I just spent 3 hours being someone I'm not anymore. That's when he knew he needed more work. The identity wasn't solid yet, so he did more practice. He strengthened his morning routine. He deepened his commitment to his non-negotiables. A month later, he went back to that same neighborhood and passed the test. He stayed in his new identity the entire time. It was uncomfortable, but he held it. And that's when he knew, this is real now. I'm not performing anymore. I've actually become this person. Your stress tests will tell you the truth. Document them. Write a report card for yourself. Test 1, pass, fail, or partial. Test 2, pass, fail, or partial. Test 3, pass, fail, or partial. Be honest. If you failed, that's okay. Fail consciously, learn from it, and test again in a week. The Relapse Prevention Protocol. Let's talk about what happens when you slip. Not if, when. Because everyone slips. Everyone has a moment where they fall back into an old pattern, make a choice their old self would have made. Find themselves acting like the person they thought they'd left behind. This doesn't mean the transformation failed. It means you're human. The difference between someone who transforms permanently and someone who transforms temporarily is how they handle the slip. Do they spiral into full relapse, or do they catch themselves quickly and course correct? The answer depends on whether they have a relapse prevention protocol. First, you need to understand what relapse actually is. It's not one bad choice. It's not one difficult day. It's not even 1 week of struggle. Relapse is when you consciously or unconsciously decide to return to your old identity because your new identity feels too hard to maintain. It's a surrender, not a slip. A slip is temporary. Relapse is a decision to quit. So when you slip, your job is to prevent the slip from becoming a relapse. You do that by catching it early and executing your protocol immediately. The protocol has 5 steps, and you need to do all 5 within 24 hours of noticing the slip. Step 1. Acknowledgement. You say out loud, preferably to another person, but at minimum to yourself, I slipped. I acted like my old self. I made a choice that doesn't align with my new identity. No excuses, no justifications, just the truth. Step 2. Investigation. You ask yourself, what triggered the slip? Was it a person, a place, a feeling, a situation? What was happening right before I reverted? You're not judging yourself. You're collecting data. Slips always have triggers, and if you know your triggers, you can prepare for them next time. Step 3. Recommitment. You pull out your blueprint document, your transformation dossier, your voice recording. You review who you've become. You remind yourself why you did this. You reconnect with your new identity. And then you say, again, out loud, I'm still this person. That was a slip, not a surrender. I'm back. Step 4, immediate action. You do one thing right now that your new self would do. Not tomorrow, not later, now. You go for a run, you make a healthy meal. You call a friend who supports your transformation. You work on your project. Something tangible that proves you're back in your new identity. Step 5, documentation. You write down what happened, the slip, the trigger, the recommitment, the action. You add it to your transformation log. This serves 2 purposes. It helps you learn your patterns, and it creates accountability. You're not hiding the slip or pretending it didn't happen. You're owning it and moving forward. If you do these 5 steps within 24 hours, you turn a slip into a learning experience instead of a relapse. But if you skip the protocol, if you let the slip sit unacknowledged for 2 or 3 days, it becomes a crack, and cracks become breaks. Now let's talk about the warning signs that you're heading toward relapse, even if you haven't slipped yet. There are 7, and if you notice 3 or more at the same time, you need to execute an emergency intervention. Warning sign 1. You stop doing your non-negotiables. Maybe you skip 1, then 2. Then suddenly you haven't done any of them in 4 days. Warning sign 2. You're avoiding people who support your transformation. You stop texting your accountability partner. You don't show up to the group. You isolate. Warning sign 3. You're romanticizing your old life. You're thinking about how much simpler things were before, how much less pressure there was. Warning sign 4. You're making decisions from your old identity without realizing it. You say yes to something you should say no to. You go somewhere your new self wouldn't go. You spend time with people your new self wouldn't choose. Warning sign 5. You're exhausted all the time, not from effort, but from internal conflict. Part of you wants to stay transformed, part of you wants to go back, and the battle is draining you. Warning sign 6. You're losing your sense of purpose. You can't remember why this transformation mattered. It feels like an arbitrary decision you made that you could just as easily unmake. Warning sign 7. You're bargaining with yourself. You're thinking, maybe I don't need to be this strict. Maybe I can ease up a little. Maybe the old way wasn't so bad. If you notice 3 or more of these, you don't wait. You execute the emergency intervention immediately. The emergency intervention has 3 parts, and they're designed to pull you back from the edge before you fall. Part 1. 24-hour identity immersion. You spend the entire next day doing nothing but identity-reinforcing activities. You wake up and do an extended version of your morning ritual. You read your blueprint document 3 times. You watch videos or listen to content that inspired your transformation. You spend time with people who know and support your new self. You do all 7 non-negotiables. You go to bed early. You treat this day like detox. You're flushing out the relapse thoughts and reinstalling your commitment. Part 2. Emergency conversation. You call your accountability partner or someone who knows your transformation story. You tell them, I'm struggling. I'm noticing warning signs. I need help staying committed. Then you listen to what they say. You let them remind you who you've become. You let them tell you what they've noticed about your transformation. You let them hold the vision for you when your vision gets blurry. Part 3. Future consequences. Visualization. This is uncomfortable, but necessary. You sit down and write out 2 scenarios. Scenario 1. What your life looks like in 1 year if you relapse now. Be specific. What will you be doing? How will you feel? What opportunities will you have missed? What will you think about this moment? Scenario 2. What your life looks like in 1 year if you push through this crisis. Again, be specific. What will be different? What will be possible? What will you be grateful you did? Reading these two scenarios side by side usually clarifies things quickly. The relapse scenario almost always looks worse than you want to admit. The perseverance scenario almost always looks better than you're currently able to imagine. The contrast is enough to pull you back. But here's the thing about relapse prevention. It's not just about crisis management. It's about building resilience in advance so the crisis never comes. That's where the 30, 60, 90-day check-ins come in. These are scheduled reviews where you assess your transformation health and make adjustments before small issues become big problems. At day 30, you ask, am I still doing my non-negotiables consistently? Are there any behaviors slipping? What needs to be reinforced? At day 60, you ask, is my blueprint still accurate, or has my vision evolved? Do I need to update my identity specification? Are there new behaviors I need to add? At day 90, you ask, what's working? What's not? What have I learned about myself in the last 3 months? What needs to change for the next 3 months? These check-ins create a rhythm of continuous improvement. You're not just maintaining your transformation, you're evolving it. You're making it stronger, more refined, more sustainable. And the more sustainable it is, the less likely relapse becomes. Schedule your 30, 60, 90-day check-ins right now. Put them in your calendar. Make them appointments with yourself that are just as important as any other commitment. Because they are. These check-ins might be the difference between permanent transformation and temporary change. Day-by-day micro-challenges. Now we're going to get granular. For each day from day 8 to day 21, you're getting a specific micro-challenge. These are small, focused actions designed to deepen one aspect of your transformation. You don't skip days. You don't save them up. You do one per day in order, and you document what happens. Day 8. Challenge. The discomfort sit. Today, you're going to do something uncomfortable for 15 minutes without distracting yourself. Sit with an emotion you usually avoid. Have a conversation you've been postponing. Start a task you've been procrastinating. The goal is not to complete it. The goal is to sit with the discomfort and notice that it doesn't kill you. Day 9. Challenge. The wardrobe shift. Today you wear something that makes you feel like your new self, even if it's outside your normal comfort zone. Not costume-level dramatic, just different. Something your old self wouldn't choose. Notice how it affects your posture, your confidence, your interactions. Identity shows up in how we present ourselves. Day 10. Challenge. The creation block. Today, you create for 1 uninterrupted hour. Write, draw, build, design, compose, whatever form creation takes for you. No consuming during this hour. No research, no scrolling, no learning. Just pure creation. You're proving to yourself that your new identity includes creative capacity. Day 11. Challenge. The strategic no. Today, you say no to something you would normally say yes to out of obligation or people-pleasing. An invitation, a request, a favor. You practice the power of no as an act of identity protection. Your new self has boundaries. Today, you enforce one. Day 12. Challenge. The reach out. Today, you initiate contact with someone who represents your new identity. Someone doing what you're trying to do, someone living how you're trying to live. You send an email, a message, you ask for coffee. You don't wait for permission to be in that world. You just enter it. Day 13. Challenge, the pattern interrupt. Today, you deliberately break one routine that's been running automatically. Take a different route to work, eat lunch at a different time, skip something you do every day. You're reminding your brain that patterns can be changed. If this pattern can change, any pattern can change. Day 14. Challenge, the evidence review. Today is the midpoint. You take an hour to review all the evidence of your transformation so far. Reread your notes, look at your behavior log, review your photos. You're not done, but you're not at the beginning anymore either. Acknowledge how far you've come. Day 15. Challenge, the public declaration. Today, you tell someone outside your inner circle about your transformation, not for approval, just for reality. You're making it public. You're saying, this is happening. The more people who know, the more real it becomes. Day 16. Challenge, the fear confrontation. Today, you do one thing your old self was afraid to do. Public speaking, leading a meeting, sharing your work, having a difficult conversation. Small or large doesn't matter. What matters is you do the thing your fear said you couldn't. Day 17. Challenge, the gratitude inventory. Today, you write down 21 things that have improved since you started this transformation. Relationships, health, mindset, opportunities, whatever has gotten better. You're building a case for why this change was worth it. You're creating motivation for the final stretch. Day 18. Challenge, the future letter. Today, you write a letter to yourself 6 months from now. Tell your future self what you're experiencing right now, what you hope they've accomplished, what you hope they've become. Seal it and schedule a reminder to open it in 6 months. Day 19. Challenge, the Sabbath. Today, you rest. You take a break from active transformation work. You don't do extra. You just be. You practice existing as your new self without striving. This is important because your new identity needs to include rest, not just relentless effort. Day 20. Challenge, the final stress test. Today, you face your biggest trigger. The person, place, situation, or feeling that most reliably pulled you back into your old identity. You go there, you face it, and you stay in your new self the entire time. This is your final exam. Day 21. Challenge, the celebration. Today, you mark the completion in a way that matters to you. You don't skip this. You don't minimize it. You did something remarkable. You became someone new. In 21 days, you acknowledge it, you celebrate it, you let it be real. For each of these challenges, you're going to write a 1-paragraph reflection afterward. What happened? How did it feel? What did you learn? This creates a day-by-day record of your transformation journey. Years from now, you'll look back at these reflections and remember exactly how you did this. The rest of your life. Day 22. You made it. 3 weeks ago, you were someone else. Now you're here. Different. Transformed. And you might be expecting some kind of arrival, some feeling of completion, some sense that you've finished. But you haven't finished. You've just started. This is what people don't tell you about transformation. There's no end point. There's no moment where you cross a finish line and get to stop being intentional about who you are. The work doesn't end. It just changes. You move from creation to maintenance, from building to protecting, from becoming to being. But you're never done. Day 22 is not an ending. It's the first day of your permanent new reality. And the question now is, what happens next? What happens next is you keep living as this person. You keep making the choices they would make. You keep showing up the way they would show up. You keep protecting and maintaining and refining this identity. And gradually, so gradually you won't even notice, it stops feeling like something you're doing and starts feeling like something you are. The compound effect is real. Every day you live as your new self, the neural pathways get stronger, the behaviors get more automatic, the identity gets more solid. After 21 days, you've created the foundation. After 90 days, it's starting to feel natural. After a year, people who meet you won't know you were ever anyone else. After 5 years, you won't remember what it felt like to be your old self, except as a distant memory of someone you used to know. But it only compounds if you keep going. If you stop being intentional, if you coast, if you think you can relax now, you'll slide back. Not all the way, probably, but enough that you'll lose some of what you built. So you don't stop. You just continue. Becoming is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong practice. You're going to have multiple 21-day cycles in your life. Maybe you transform your physical health this time. Next time, it's your career. Then your relationships. Then your purpose. You're not becoming one new person and stopping. You're learning how to become anyone you need to be for the rest of your life. That's the real gift of these 21 days. Not just that you changed, but that you proved to yourself that you can change. That identity is not fixed. That you're not stuck with who you were or who you thought you'd be. That you can design yourself deliberately and consciously and step into that design. So, what's next? The next 21 days. Blueprint. You're going to plan your next iteration. Maybe it's deepening the transformation you just completed. Maybe it's tackling a different domain. Maybe it's helping someone else through their transformation. But you're going to approach the next 21 days with the same intentionality you brought to these 21 days. Sit down today and map out the next cycle. What aspect of your life needs transformation next? What behaviors need to be added or removed? What beliefs need to be updated? Who do you need to become in the next 21 days? Write it out. Make a plan. Don't let the momentum die just because you hit day 21. And you're going to write yourself a letter. Seal it. Put it somewhere safe. Instructions. Open 1 year from today. In that letter, tell yourself who you are now on day 22. Describe your new identity. List your new behaviors. Explain what you overcame, what you learned, who you became. Then tell your future self what you hope they've done with this foundation, what you hope they've built on top of it, who you hope they've become next. 1 year from now, you're going to open that letter and read it. And you're going to see how far you've come. Or you're going to see that you slipped and you need to start again. Either way, you'll have the data. You'll know. And knowing is what gives you power. The legacy question is this: who will you help transform after you? Because now you know how to do this. You know the process. You know the pitfalls. You know what works and what doesn't. And that knowledge is valuable, not just for you. For anyone who's stuck being someone they don't want to be anymore. You don't have to become a coach or a teacher or write a book, but you can be the person who tells someone else, I was where you are. I got out. Here's how. You can be the proof that transformation is possible, that identity is not destiny, that 21 days is enough time to become someone completely different. Think about one person in your life right now who's stuck, who's living as someone they don't want to be but doesn't know how to change. Maybe it's a friend, a family member, a colleague, someone who watched your transformation and wondered if they could do it too. Reach out to them this week. Tell them your story. Offer to help them through their own 21 days. Not because you're an expert, but because you just did it, and you remember what it was like. Your transformation ripples outward. The people around you notice. They wonder. They ask questions. They start to think, if they could do it, maybe I could too. And suddenly you're not just changing yourself, you're changing the culture around you. You're showing people what's possible. One transformation can spark 10 more. 10 can spark 100. You're not just becoming someone new, you're proving that becoming someone new is possible. And that proof is what the world needs. Not more motivation, not more inspiration, but actual evidence that real people can make real changes in real time. But that comes later. Right now, in this moment, on day 22, you just need to acknowledge what you did. You didn't just try to change. You actually changed. You didn't just think about becoming someone new. You became someone new. You tore down your old identity. You sat in the void. You built a blueprint. You implemented it. You went public. You survived the resistance. You passed the tests. You have proof. Look at yourself in the mirror today and see a different person than the one who looked back 21 days ago. The face might look the same, but the person behind the eyes is different. The way you carry yourself is different. The way you think is different. The choices you make are different. You're different. And different is exactly what you set out to be. 3 weeks ago, you were someone else. Today, you're here. Tomorrow, you'll be here again. And the day after that, and the day after that. Until being this person is so natural, you don't remember what it felt like to be anyone else. Until people who knew the old, you can barely remember what that person was like. Until you, yourself, look back at old photos or old journal entries and think, who was that? Because that person is so far from who you are now that they feel like a stranger. That's the goal. Not to improve incrementally. Not to become a slightly better version of yourself, but to become someone so different that your past self becomes unrecognizable. And you've done it. In 21 days, you've done it. You did it. Now do it again and again for the rest of your life. Because that's the promise. That's the guarantee. If you execute this blueprint, if you do the work, if you stay intentional, you will never be stuck again. You will always have the power to become whoever you need to be next. The person you were is gone. The person you are is here. The person you'll become is waiting. All of them are you. All of them are possible. All of them are just 21 days away. 3 weeks from now, who will you be? The answer is whoever you decide. And the decision starts now. Again, and again, and again, forever. That's not a burden. That's freedom. You're free to be anyone. You're free to change at any time. You're free to never be stuck again. Welcome to day 22. Welcome to the rest of your life. Welcome to the permanent state of becoming. You're not done. You're just beginning. And that's exactly how it should be.